Hello, I'm Don Mooers. Welcome to Montgomery Week in Review. The Montgomery County State's Attorney's Office has to go to Annapolis each year to advocate for bills that mean a lot to us in Montgomery County at the General Assembly. 2019 is particularly important because there are changes in the membership of the Judiciary Committee and new members within our delegation to reach out to as well. Robert Hill, a senior state's attorney and the chief of legislative affairs for the state's attorney's office, is here to explain. Madison House has programs for autistic persons who live in our area to meet the varied needs of this very, very important population. The holidays can be especially challenging to people with autism because they respond differently to varying social norms. JaLynn Prince, the founder and president of Madison House, is here to discuss these needs. Jubilee, I love that name, Jubilee, has been present in our county for 40 years, providing support and housing for disabled adults. One of its most successful accomplishments we're going to talk about here is its employment retention rate. Tim Wiens, executive director for many of those years, not all 40, but for many years, he's retiring. He's here to tell us what he's most proud of, especially this employment retention rate. The Fulbright organization, Fulbright scholars have been working around the world. They are mainstays in the world's efforts, global efforts, to enhance and enable individuals to better understand the world around them, especially to share ideas. The idea of Senator Fulbright was by having people share ideas, working together, we're going to have a much better chance of having world peace. Dr. Bruce Fowler, a member of the Fulbright board, will share some of the discussions that he participated in from the recent general meeting of the Fulbright Association held earlier this month in Mexico. Robert Hill, welcome back.
Thank you, Don.
It's been far too long.
Pleasure to be here. Pleasure to be here.
You know, when I think of the state's attorney's office, I think of you all prosecuting. I think of so many great efforts you do in the community in terms of know your rights and helping to prevent crime, working hand in hand sometimes with the police. I don't think of you having to go to Annapolis.
Well, I'll tell you, proactive work is critical. The traditional role has been we wait for the crime to happen. It comes to us, we prosecute it, and we're done. As you know, we're in the schools, we work with young people,
right.
But also I go to Annapolis 3 months of the year, and I work on legislation that is critical to prosecutors in the criminal justice system.
So, you know, with the state's attorney's office in Montgomery County, I remember speaking to the state's attorney, to John McCarthy, just a great human being.
Yes.
and great leader. There's a whole association of the state's attorneys offices in Maryland, right? I mean, do you all work together? Are there some common issues that you come up? Or
Yes.
Is mostly everything just Montgomery County oriented?
Yes, no, it's statewide and Montgomery County oriented. John frequently comes up and testifies on bills that are of particular interest to our office, but there is a Maryland States Attorneys Association. It's based in Howard County. There's a coordinator. I'm on a legislative committee, and there are counterparts to the other major offices, and we meet once a week to talk about potential legislation.
I know that. Great. Yeah,
What are
please.
some of the major things that are coming up during the next legislature?
Good question.
Well, I'll tell you what, I can tell you that gangs has been a big issue in Montgomery County.
Back again.
There is, in the last session, the governor actually sponsored some legislation. It did not pass, but it caught the attention of a number of legislators. And they're going to have a task force, and they're to report to us in June of 2020 to try to deal with the gang statute and to improve it.
All right.
So Robert, we've been hearing at the national level about this prison reform, sentencing reform that's going on. Is that something that you have anything to do with? Is that going to affect us? What do you going to say about that?
The Justice Reinvestment Act, which passed in 2016, there's major changes. They've done away with mandatory minimums in felony drug cases or charges, with the exception of volume dealers. But the recognition is that we need to focus on nonviolent offenders getting treatment, getting help, and we keep the violent offenders in, but it's more cost effective. So on both sides of the aisle, the Republicans like that part, the Democrats like the idea of giving the second chance, and it's the Reinvestment Act is in progress right now, and we'll see what happens.
What impact is the increasing diversity of Montgomery County having on your office?
Oh, it's really something. It's changed dramatically. Now our office is reflecting the community.
Sure.
We have diversity in our office, but of course it's more complicated, and we have to be aware of the community that we're serving.
Languages.
Languages is
Oh,
where I was
absolutely.
going
Legal
with it.
backgrounds. I mean, coming from a civil law country and then going into now we have common law. And
We are an international community.
Yeah,
Absolutely international
absolutely.
community.
I think following up on JaLynn's question as well, a number of issues coming up. I think one of the big issues that you all have to deal with, as I read the tea leaves, new committee, Judiciary Committee chair, someone who wasn't as friendly, as I understand, to some of the alternative, more progressive ideas, is gone, and in out with the old and in with the new. Tell us what that's like.
Well, Joe Valerio, who's a good friend, and I worked with him for many years, and we didn't always see eye to eye, but we remained great friends. He's gone. He lost in the primary. He's going to be replaced by Luke Clippinger, who actually is an assistant state's attorney in Anne Arundel County. He's represents Baltimore City. Now, he's not going to do us any special favors, but he's going to do two things. He's going to work on a subcommittee format, and in that format, the subcommittees will vet the bills. Joe used to vet the bills
Right.
himself. Now it's going to be subcommittees that are going to be vetting the bills. And also, I think that Luke will adhere to the 3-minute rule for witnesses.
We've got 30 seconds left. What more do you want to add about the challenges that you see ahead in Annapolis?
Well, we need to see, the committees aren't fully formed yet, of course, because we've just had a new wave coming in with the election. I'm looking forward to working with Will Smith, who is a Montgomery County senator, and he's the vice chair of judicial proceedings, which is the Senate side, Senate counterpart of the judiciary. And we've worked well with him in the past. But no, there are a number of pieces of legislation that you know.
We're nearly 20% of the population of the state. I'm hoping we get at least 20% of the seats on both the House
Right,
and
right,
Senate
right,
for
right.
dealing with you. So you've got a lot of friendly faces to work with.
Yes.
Look forward to hearing more about these challenges and hopefully successes, Robert.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
JaLynn,
Hello.
speaking of success,
Yes.
when I see you and I think about Madison House and all the hard work and dedication that you've put in and all the people who work with you, I just see success. And, you know, we look ahead to the holidays. Tell us about the special needs of individuals with autism along the spectrum during the holiday season.
First of all, thank you for your acknowledgement. We have a hardworking staff. Thank you. During the holiday season, it's challenging for any family. I mean, we talk about civil wars with families over a turkey dinner. And when you add other complications to it, sometimes it makes for environments that don't necessarily need to be created. So,
Yeah, some of the details. What are some of the things?
if you're a parent, let your loved one know, no matter what their age is, what to expect at Thanksgiving, because Thanksgiving looks very different than any other meal. Noise is there, maybe Aunt Hazel, Uncle George, Grandma, Grandpa, kids running around. Outline the day. What's going to be happening? Is there going to be football? Is there going to be dinner? Is there going to be quiet time?
Right.
Is there a place to go if things get a little bit too
escape.
stressed?
Right.
Yes.
Sure.
We all need
Or
those
release.
spots.
So maybe sitting at a table for an hour and a half isn't for everybody.
Exactly. And we've seen situations too where you have to look at the menu, and we've seen pizza served at Thanksgiving. And if that's what somebody wants and that's how somebody is thankful for what they've got, you know, why not have pizza and turkey? You know, it works. But if you're going places, to have that social story. And if you're going to be hosting, make certain that you are hospitable to the individual. Coming up and asking a lot of questions may not be the best thing, but just saying, "Hi, John, please come in," may be enough. There's a lot of interesting things.
Okay,
Yes.
I have experience with this with Fulbright, that we have a number of visiting Fulbrighters from other countries, and inviting them to Thanksgiving dinner is a big deal.
It is.
Okay, and both for them and for us, and to have a memory that they will carry back to their country of origin is very, very important and priceless. And so, I mean, it's a bit of a stress, particularly if you have people with special dietary requirements to work around, but it can be done. I've done it.
But looking at this from
Yes.
the autism's perspective, how do you see that in terms of these stresses?
Well, I mean, if you have a person in your home who has autism, you know, this is we're stacking up blocks.
Yes, we are.
But it's important to do it, I think, both for the people visiting, but also for the people with autism, that
And
they're
I
plugged
think
into this.
Stepping back and just taking a look at how you can make something a little less intimidating, prepare people a day or so in advance for what it is,
Sure.
having a quiet zone, having some special accommodations just for them. Maybe there's a movie, maybe there's something else. And this pertains to many ages, and it pertains to the host, and it pertains to families. So give it some thought.
Sounds like
because-
it's also an opportunity for learning too,
Oh, it is.
of individuals who have not had the opportunity, the joy of being with someone who has autism, to learn about the differences and to
Yes.
embrace the differences.
And because a perspective may be different, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's wrong.
Right.
Just take pizza. Why not have pizza and turkey?
Well, it
It's a
depends on
different
what the,
way.
Whoa, whoa, whoa,
and-
it depends on what the
Turkey
toppings are on the
Well, it does. You know, you
Let's
can have
be straight
cranberry
about this.
topping on
Special
there instead of
dietary
pineapple.
Has to have
You can do
anchovies.
it.
We must have anchovies.
But just to look at answering questions in a different fashion. And it doesn't mean there's a right or a wrong.
Right.
There can be two right answers in a lot of things.
But you know, what's expected, I think, in my experience with people on the autism spectrum, if they know what's coming, what's expected, they're much more likely going to fit into the social scene than if they don't. And,
Yes.
and the ability to leave when it's too much, you know, to be able to take a break and get away.
And also to make sure that Aunt Millie and Uncle Al are not, understand that if someone is adverse to physical touch,
Right.
to not do that.
Right.
And again, as a learning part, that, you know, I haven't seen you in so long, and just set off. And
Right. And again, the questioning situation. How are you? What have you been doing? Tell me about school. Where I was going. It can be really hard because somebody may be stuck on the first question and you're on to the fifth one. So take a deep breath. And if somebody selects to be quiet, it doesn't mean that they don't want to be involved.
or not like you. About
Exactly.
30 seconds left. Give
One
us
thing that we
some
would
stuff.
like to ask, if people during this time of year are considering volunteering time now or throughout the spring, we would like to make a phone number available.
Right, it's on there.
Because we have Madison House, we have Madison Fields, which is part of Madison House. In Dickerson, we've got a farm, and we're doing all sorts of exciting things from small animals to gardens to horses to working with the individuals. And if you're wanting to put this into your schedule or making New Year's resolutions, this is a wonderful way to be part of the community, and people can benefit from your wisdom, and you'll learn
As
a
a former
lot.
as a former agricultural extension agent, I amen. Get out there and
Thank
do
you.
it. It's a lot of fun. Unfortunately, we have to take a break. We'll be right back with the second half of our program.
Mom, can we get some ice cream? Please, Mom, please.
No, we're having dinner soon.
Please.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. There are thousands of children in foster care who will take you just as you are.
In the small town of Elmira, New York, a boy was born into an all-American family. The odds of him achieving his dream in the fashion industry? 1 in 23 million. The odds of having a child diagnosed with autism? 1 in 88. I am Tommy Hilfiger, and my family is affected by autism. Learn more at autismspeaks.org/signs.
For those dealing with the daily struggles of caring for a loved one, we hear you. That's why AARP created a community with experts and other caregivers to help us better care for ourselves and the ones we love.
Getting closer to nature can get you closer to your family. Go to discovertheforest.org.
Back, Tim Wiens. Tell us it ain't so, Tim Wiens. Retiring.
Yeah.
That Jubilee is such a joyful. This is Jubal down.
I know, it'll be painful to leave. I will have been there 40 years when I leave. So, yeah, it's mixed blessing because I am looking forward to retirement, but it's also painful to leave because I love what I do.
Baby.
It is.
Well, Tim, I think, as we were talking, one of the most impressive aspects of your job has been to, in my experience from this show and elsewhere, is publicizing the fact that disabled youth become disabled adults. Mm-hmm. And that with all of our focus being on youth, that then we have, that's 1/3 of their lives or 1/4 of their lives.
Sure.
And you're there like, well, the rest of their lives. We're working, and my hat's off to you because
thank you.
Your work has done more to help ensure that we're focused on that than just about anybody else. This employment, because employment is such a huge issue.
Yeah,
for you.
it's one of the things that I'm most proud of is our ability to create what I call a healthy workplace,
right, and
to retain staff. And retaining direct service staff is the key to quality services. And the national average for direct service staff is around 46% turnover per year.
And we're talking about direct service staff being whom?
Being counselors that work with individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities in a residential setting, and supporting them in their own apartments, in-home supports, all those kind of things, helping adults live in the community.
And that retention rate is over what period of time?
So we look at it annually, and so over 15 years, our retention rate, our turnover rate is about 23%. Last year was 15%.
Wow.
And we have about half full-time, half part-time staff. Among our full-time direct service staff, it was 6%. Which was unbelievable.
And that's remarkable.
And I was talking with our HR director, and I was saying, so what are we doing? How are we achieving this? And it really wasn't kind of one thing, but I think the keys to any employer to retention is, do your employees really believe in your mission? Are they committed to what you're doing? Do they like their supervisor? And do they like who they work with? And if you can get those three things right, that works.
I'd add a fourth and come in and open this up. And that's, do I feel valued? Mm-hmm. Do I, am I appreciated? I think one of the issues for any employer, and I'm a small, I've got a number of people working, is that, am I treating each person as if they're the most valuable, within thing? And
Absolutely.
And it sounds to me that that's what you do.
Yeah, and if you have good supervisors, that's what they do. They value you as an employee.
Have you lost any of your employees because of ICE and deportation? I've heard numerous things around the country about that.
We have not. I mean, we have a very international workforce, and so more than 50% of our employees are African-born. And so they worry about that, but we have not experienced that. But given, we have a very diverse workforce, and so issues of race is something we talk about, and we want to make sure people can listen and hear each other's story, and so that doesn't become an issue. It becomes something people value, that the diversity is a strength.
I have a question. And vulnerable adults, there's a statute, exploitation of vulnerable adults.
Right.
How do you ensure that the staffers are safe and work well with disabled people?
So, I mean, it starts with who you hire and having really a rigorous process of doing reference checks, all the things that you need to do, doing criminal background checks, kind of all of those kind of things, and then having good quality assurance systems in place. And the state of Maryland has a very rigorous system. We have to report any unusual incident, and they will look at that and triage that and investigate that. But I think people being connected to community helps as well, because people notice. And I get calls from family members, et cetera, something's not right here, Tim. And that's what you want. You want them to be connected to the community, because the community is going to let you know.
Sort of wrap around.
Right. Exactly. Right.
How many residences do you have, and how many people do you serve?
So we serve 135 people in 70 locations. And so we've kind of moved beyond group homes, and I've been here to talk about that before, and helping people live in their own homes, live in their own apartments, live with friends, And we've partnered with people to do the housing. And so part of that number, the location number, is high because we have a lot of people living in their own apartments, or we do in-home supports, people living with their families.
How about cooperating with places like Cornerstone, Montgomery to
Real quick.
place people out?
So we do a lot of collaborations. I mean, building partnerships is part of what we do. And we don't do employment services, and so we work with other folks that do the employment services.
Final word. 40 years, proud of stuff.
I mean, I think building a healthy workplace, I think being innovative, and I think, just the relationships that I have made and that we have made, and those connections with the folks that we serve.
You're staying on the board.
No. In nonprofit management, you're supposed to step away
Right.
a bit and give space for the new leadership. So I may be around, but I want to step back to give space for the new leader.
We're going to miss you, Tim Wiens.
Thanks.
Hope you'll come back on the show and help us.
I
continue.
hope you'll invite me.
Good work that you've been doing.
Thank
Very
you.
good work.
Thank you.
Bruce
Sir.
Fowler, doctor.
Okay.
Fulbright Board, you just had a big meeting
Yes.
in Mexico, of all places, of the Fulbright Association. What a symbolic place to hold your annual meeting.
This was in Puebla, Mexico, annual meeting.
Right.
And so we had people from all over the world, really, of course, who came.
Because there are Fulbright Associations in just about every country in the world where Fulbright's goes both ways. Fulbright's going from the United States out, Fulbright's from other countries studying in the United States.
That is correct. And we have people, both students and people who have time to do that, but also senior scholars.
Right.
And people now they're even tucking in shorter term appointments to various countries so that people
Lectureships and other
lectureships
things, sure.
and that kind of thing. This particular conference was very interesting, and its title was Un Mundo Muchas Voces, which means one world, many voices.
Right.
And it was that. And the people in Puebla were just outstanding. This was a wonderful city.
Right.
And most gracious to all of us, and very interesting. The thing is that the other thing I want to say about this is the caravan
Right.
goes through Puebla. That's
Okay,
where it
did they go
starts.
through while you were there?
Yes.
Wow.
Okay. Now this
What
is
timing?
Describe the feeling of the situation.
well. This adds another level, and to be able to observe how people were treated by the Mexican people as they're coming. These are people coming from Central America. They were most gracious, and in fact, what I understand is that I didn't get to Mexico City, but they opened one of their soccer stadiums
Right.
to provide health care and treatment for these people. Other thing to be aware of is that it's approximately, I looked this up, 2,000 miles from the southern Mexican border to the southern U.S. border.
Right.
And who
long
makes
way.
up the
Well,
population that you
I
saw?
want to keep going on with this
Yeah.
Fulbright. I think that's really important. If you can touch
Okay.
it real quick.
Okay, I'm gonna. Well, the point is that we're, as I've said before, we're living on a spaceship. Okay,
Right.
and we all have to get along.
Right.
And it's how we treat each other in terms of avoiding conflict. And that's the core principle.
What you're talking about, I want to open up for questions coming back to some of the things that you all were doing in Puebla, and certainly the caravan on and what you just said is so important. But one of the things that seems to be what Fulbright stands for, and what Senator Fulbright in creating the program, getting it through Congress, is sort of the opposite of many of the strains we're seeing around the world, not just in the
Isolation.
the isolation or nationalism that we hear in the United States and that President Macron decried, but so much in many of the countries everywhere of let's look at ourselves and not working cooperatively. But Fulbright stands opposite.
It
to
runs
that.
counter to all of that, exactly. There was an article in the Dallas Morning News about this caravan. They were interviewing a Mexican farmer who said, how could we turn our back on them?
Sure.
What does it say about our country?
Right.
And I mean, we could be wind up like the Americans.
So were you ever a Fulbright Scholar yourself? Did
Oh,
you-
sure. Yeah, I was in Sweden.
You were Sweden, right.
Okay. In Stockholm. And that's another very progressive country and welcoming of immigrants historically.
Well, let me ask you this. What came out of this conference in terms of trying to turn the tide in the global effort of looking inward, so we're back to looking outward and seeing more similarities than highlighting differences and defects of our neighbors?
Well,
What would you say?
Basically, how do I say this? Our political leaders are supposed to help people get along, as opposed to get in the way.
So the Fulbright, so you all were working on ways to get them to change.
To
I mean, that's what I'm
cooperative,
talking about
cooperative
here.
program.
What are you doing?
And the value of this.
We've got about a minute left.
Okay, the value of this conference was, for me personally, was that I wound up sitting down with the heads of the couple of commissions, including one in Taiwan.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and they have an isolation problem too, a big one. But what we were talking about is the next conference, 2020, will be in Taiwan
Wow,
to
good.
run at that.
Okay.
So that these people are not left out. And this is very, very, very important. I'll
Well,
stop.
and I think of Robert here, and they're lawyers and looking at, I mean, everything across and disabilities. I mean, there's Fulbrighters are studying everything and are working together with colleagues and everything. Right? We've got 30 seconds left.
That is correct. If you go on the Fulbright side and they'll ask current position of former Fulbrighters, there's something like 29 heads of state. The one I like the best is the King of Spain. You know, it lists usually Prime Minister or something, this guy, King. Now, how do you top that?
Now, I have a question.
Wait, real quick,
when I
one
think
second.
of Fulbrights, I think of young people, but do older folks?
Yes, they do.
Yes, they do. That's our last word. Young, old, hold on. I'm sorry. I wish we could talk so much more. Thank you for joining me today. And thank all of you for joining us for this week's edition of Montgomery Week in Review. I'm Don Moores, inviting you to join us next week at this very same time. Good last question.